Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, a Spotlight podcast. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
Okay, well, as of this recording, we're knee-deep in a long-term pandemic, which has upended businesses of all kinds. Even before the pandemic, retail shopping was being revolutionized by the advent of online shopping. But some business owners and industries are forging ahead nonetheless. Here to share great new business about to hit mid-Michigan are the co-owners of Hooked, Matt Grossman and Sarah Reckhow. Welcome, Matt and Sarah.
Good to be with you.
Great to be here.
Well, let's just dive right into it. So what is Hooked going to be?
Hooked is an independent bookstore, coffee shop, and wine bar, emphasizing educational events, guided tastings, and monthly clubs. And we're operating online at hookedlansing.com and expect to open in the fall at the intersection of Lansing and East Lansing. I'm sorry, the spring.
April.
Right on. Perfect. All right. So this is fascinating. So, I mean, the locally owned bookstore, you got wine bar, you got coffee. I mean, and it's awesome. So how did this idea get hatched?
So in some respects, the idea goes back through the history of our relationship. We met in Berkeley, California as graduate students and really enjoyed a pretty vibrant cafe scene in Berkeley and in San Francisco, coffee shops that converted to wine bars in the evening. And then we moved to East Lansing in 2007. And noticed, there wasn't quite as much around here in terms of coffee offerings or wine bars. So we would talk about it a lot as this long-term plan that we'd love to start something. But initially, we didn't have the bookstore piece in mind until we had the opportunity to spend 1 year on sabbatical in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And in that year, really enjoyed the bookstore scene in Cambridge and all the bookstores that offered events and author talks and just ways to kind of meet and mingle in a bookstore setting. And so when we came back here in 2019, we thought that bringing together the bookstore idea with a cafe would really create a community kind of space that we felt this area would really welcome.
Excellent. So now you talked sabbatical. So remind the world that you do have day jobs, right?
Yes,
and so
we
sabbatical lends to academics. So
yes.
Talk a little bit about what your day jobs are.
So we are both faculty at Michigan State. We are both political scientists. My work is mostly in urban politics. So I teach about cities and public policy. And so things like economic development are actually kind of within the kind of work that I do in terms of teaching and research.
And I'm director of the Institute for Public Policy and Social Research, which is sort of the main outreach vehicle to state government at MSU. So spend a lot of time trying to apply research to what's being debated in the legislature and in state government.
Fantastic. Both very complex, fields of study. So I think most people with normal day jobs daydream about if I could just toss it all away. Not that you're dissatisfied with the work that you're doing, but do a pet project, right? How do I do something that I'm really, that's fun and something that I'm really passionate about? So many people have those daydreams, but it takes a certain level of commitment to say, you know what, let's actually do this. When did that happen for you, and what kind of tipped you over into making this dream a reality?
Well, my parents owned a small business in my hometown of Columbia, Missouri, that operated for 50 years. So I was sort of pretty used to that as a way of growing up. But I would say the switchover was as we came back, we decided we wanted to put it in, take it into fruition. And during the pandemic, we had the time and sort of the inclination to take on the planning to make it happen.
That's fantastic. That's great. So, the coffee, so you've already kind of shared this. So the coffee and the wine and that culture that you had out on the West Coast was the impetus. And then the recent traveling to Mass gave you the bookstore idea and the folding all that in together. So did you research around and take a look? Well, you're into research. I mean, you both are. So is this a template that you've seen successful around the country or the world?
Yes, it is. So there are other examples, especially in college towns, where we've been seeing the idea of a bookstore and a cafe, and the cafe not only offering coffee, but potentially offering wine or beer and being open later into the evening as a combination. There's a new business along these lines in Champaign-Urbana, so another Big Ten college town.
Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
several in somewhat similar markets. And the independent bookstore association is sort of a pretty active group. So we basically hear about every new bookstore opening in the United States. And I went to a bookstore boot camp in Florida and met 10 other people who were starting similar kinds of models. So it's a well-honed model.
Well, how does that doesn't seem to equate? I mean, you're talking about economic development and vibrancy and stuff. That's a passion of mine as well. But Amazon started as a online book seller, right? And clearly they've morphed into the monster that they are, in not necessarily a bad way, not judging. But so why do you think there is this advent of locally owned bookstores? What's drawing people to that particular model when with Kindles and the ability to buy things online, libraries? I mean, why is this such a popular renaissance right now, do you think?
Well, people really want to, I think, come back out and go to community spaces and talk to one another and learn from one another, especially in a community with a lot of people with knowledge to share. And so I think that is a sort of a basis for a successful community that can make for a business. I think there are some misconceptions. I think that the number of bookstores actually only declined if you count Borders. Basically, Amazon put one of the large chains out of business. But other than that, there has been some stability and growth in the small bookstore market. And similarly, with thinking about like Starbucks and coffee,
right.
Starbucks basically created a market of regular coffee drinkers. And so now today there's more coffee shops than there ever has been.
Right. And I think about having 3 revenue streams. I mean, getting back to the business side of it, I mean, clearly, or maybe 4, right? If you have the retail sale of books, the coffee and the morning crowd, and then probably some food service items. And then you've got the wine and the evening side. And then, I mean, will you have clubs and guest speakers and all that kind of stuff that will also kind of help bring people in?
Yeah, we will. So we will have events like author talks. We will host book clubs. So there will both be the opportunity that, say, if you already have a book club and you want we all have a community table where folks could reserve it and have a space to meet, but we'll also foster in-store book clubs. So maybe you're not a member of a book club yet, but you want to meet people. I mean, this community constantly has people moving to the area.
Right.
MSU brings people in, the state capitol, Sparrow. And so the opportunity to come into a space where you're just getting to know the area and the community. And books are such a great way to foster conversation and meet people. We also want to really welcome all ages. So we'll have a kids section. We'll have kids-oriented events. It'll be, there are college students nearby, so we certainly expect to be welcoming the students.
But also a senior living facility next door as well. So we'll have the full range. And we're going to have events also for coffee tastings and wine tastings as well. And there'll be charcuterie boards and toasts. So it also will be a nice place for events more generally. Right.
And you mentioned the Starbucks brand, which I think also is probably the impetus for places where people go and linger for hours, right? So it's whether they're studying or those kinds of things. So to get food, to get coffee, to get a glass of wine, to do your book club and really linger in your space seems like something that will be rewarding for the visitor and also economically, hopefully.
And we hope browsing some books as
Absolutely,
well.
Right. Yeah, right,
Yes.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about where you are. So where exactly is your location going to be?
So we're in the Red Cedar development, which is just south of Frandor at 127 and Michigan Avenue, right on the border of Lansing and East Lansing. So it's actually walkable to campus, but in the city of Lansing. And it's part of a big development, as you know, that has students, has older folks, has a market rate apartment building that we'll be in. So we'll be in the ground floor retail of a big new apartment building.
Fantastic. Yeah, we've had shows on here about the Red Cedar. So for our listeners, you can archive the Red Cedar project to hear a little bit more about that. But yeah, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of students, hundreds of non-students, I guess is what we would call them, the market rate apartment dwellers. And then there is a 55 and older living compound behind that. And then a couple of hotels, I think, are under construction now as well. So this is really going to be its own community in its own right. And then if I'm not mistaken, I think they, the drain commissioner had to create almost a park-like setting behind this that created a good pathway over to campus. So, not only are you going to have a bunch of people on site, but hopefully it'll be really walkable to the other 60,000 people that are going to be a quarter mile to the east of you. So, and then the freeway access and all that. So it sounds like a great location for you.
Yeah, we really see it as a bridge between the college town community and the state capitol community. And in some respects, one of the things we want to emphasize in the events are things like current affairs and things that are of interest to the community in the state capitol, but also drawing in the students. So that's, and of course, given our interests as political scientists, current affairs and public policy is high up there.
Right. So I did a little, obviously, research before we did the show. And I mean, you're very active on social. Your website's up and live. You're actually selling products online already, if I'm not mistaken. Can you share a little bit about how people can find you and what they would find right now that's available through your brand?
Yeah, so you can go to hookedlansing.com and you'll see, yes, we're currently selling books and coffee online. And we also are on all the major social media sites, and those links are right at the top. So you can please follow us on all of those. And we're, I think it's an opportunity not just to buy stuff now, but to sort of see the project through fruition. So we'll be sharing everything from construction photos to what treats we're offering to everything in development.
That's fantastic. And remind us again, when exactly do you think you'll be opening?
April 2022 is the goal.
Got it. Okay. And we're recording this as of December of 2021. So we got a little bit of a runway. You got your lease signed and construction begins, and that's your target to get open, which is great, right as the weather breaks. And there's also, you've patio seating that's available too for people to be able to linger outside as well, right?
Yes, the space includes a patio that kind of wraps around the corner of the building that faces out toward Michigan Avenue.
And there's walkways around lakes and to the Lansing River Trail as well. So it'll be a nice place to stop in.
That's awesome. So when it's done, what kind of vibe are people going to experience? I mean, can you help walk us through as they kind of come through the doors? How's your business going to be laid out? What can they expect to see once it's done?
So if you enter from the Michigan Avenue facing side of the building, you'd be entering into what is the more predominantly cafe space. And there's a bar area kind of to the right. And as you look backwards into the space, you'll sort of see it transition more towards books. And the books will be able to hold 10,000 books. In terms of the coffee, we'll be offering Intelligentsia coffee, which is based in Chicago.
Okay.
So if you enter in the morning, I'm sure you'll get that aroma of the nice, coffee bean scent. In the evening, we expect to really transition towards a bit more of like that wine bar vibe where, the light's a little bit dimmer, change the nature of the music. And hopefully throughout the day, there will be people gathering and different types of events depending on the time of day and who's sort of more likely to want to attend an event maybe in the morning. That might be more senior folks meeting over coffee or discussing a book, or maybe kids in the evening, maybe book clubs. Folks out for a date night.
Or parents, you'll be able to come and have wine and have your kids attend the reading all in one. So
that's great. And so, you clearly work in a pretty robust campus environment, as I'm sure you've discussed this with your colleagues. And I mean, are you getting pretty positive feedback from folks saying, gosh, this is awesome. This is exactly what we need. We can't wait for you to open?
Quite a bit of enthusiasm. Yes, both among, it is true, academics buy a lot of books.
Right.
And coffee and wine.
All three.
Right. It's coffee time until it becomes wine time is what I understand to be the case. And do you think the students will be as engaged? I don't have much of a tenor as to what the college students these days are really looking for, but do you think that are they a big part of your target market?
Well, certainly for coffee, they will be. For wine and books, it'll be a mix. I think there will be some that are attracted to the wine bar atmosphere. we do think it's sort of, there are some underserved communities in the bar scene in terms of groups of women or date night where they might be more attracted to our space than say a sports bar, which we like but have a lot of.
Right.
And so I think you'll see a particular subset of the student population, and especially the grad student population, that'll be interested in coming to Hook, but we'll be welcoming all.
Wonderful. And so talked about hiring. I mean, I would imagine, are you keeping your day jobs, or are you going to transition into this as a full-time role?
We are keeping our day jobs, and we have a manager who will be working with us starting in January.
Yeah, so Jay Bemis, I'm actually interviewing him for our website so folks can meet Jay as well. He currently works at the corporate Big B and has worked at 6 different bookstores, so he's going to be bringing a lot of experience on that side. But we're also in the market for more of a bar manager at the moment, so we'll be hiring in January. We just had a article in the local newspaper in the Lansing State Journal, and we immediately received 7 resumes unsolicited from people who wanted to work at the store. So I think it's going to be a popular place that people want to be a part of.
Good. And if I imagine everything you're talking about, it doesn't seem like it's going to be too terribly labor intensive. I mean, maybe I'm undershooting it, but the volume of people that need to work there.
We expect to have about 15 people total.
Okay.
It is going to be a long day because we're going to open at 8 in the morning and some nights be open till 10 p.m. Wednesday through Saturday. So there will need to be quite a few people who are in there, and there's a lot of work ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I don't mean to underplay it, but I think of a standard restaurant, of having 80, 90 people exactly. because of the amount of hours and how many people you need on per shift. But well, that's fantastic. So anyway, if listeners here want to apply, how would they email you a resume?
If you go to hookedlansing.com and just click on Work at Hooked, we're accepting resumes that way. Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you both coming in. This has been a fantastic conversation. I wish you nothing but the best. As a vibrancy advocate for the region, I needed to tell this story, and I'm really grateful to have you come in here and talk about it. We've been talking to Matt and Sarah from Hooked, a bookstore and cafe and wine bar that's ready to open up here in East Lansing and Lansing in April of 2022. Thanks for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you.